can I say the Morrison government is committed to closing the gap. We also respect the right to protest peacefully. However, respect is a two-way street, and those protests, I think, showed a lack of respect to the millions of people in this country who've had their livelihoods impacted. A lot of people have lost their jobs. To the people who couldn't go to the funeral to bury their loved ones, to our frontline workers, our nurses and our people in health who basically have risked their health by being at these COVID places, to the teachers who've had to make enormous sacrifices trying to teach children at home, and to think that this rally could have extended the possibility of COVID continuing in the community, which would continue the lockdown, I don't think was a very smart idea, and I think that we should try and respect each other as much as we can.
The defence this morning from Daniel Andrews in terms of what the state government has done is you can't just shut this down. If thousands of people want to take to the streets, they're going to, short of, I don't know, some sort of mass police action. Do you understand that response from Daniel Andrews?
I do, but I think that at the very least they could have tried to talk people out of going. I know that they did do that, but look, I think they could have been possibly a little bit more persuasive.
They did do that.
Well, they should have been more persuasive, for example. Look, people do have a right to protest peacefully, but they've got to also show respect. Yeah, I personally, I know, for example, there wasn't really much of an attempt, I think, to talk it down very strongly. But no, look, I accept it's not an easy thing, and I didn't actually criticise the premiers directly. I criticised those people who chose not to show respect to their other fellow Australians who've made sacrifices.
Yeah, just trying to clarify that point, because Daniel Andrews and the Chief Health Officer in Victoria thought they were both fairly strong on attempting to persuade those people. Murray Watt, whatever the persuasion attempts were. Interesting, one of your colleagues, Graham Perrott, went to the protest with his son. He was actually on the program on Friday. What did you make of that decision? It's being criticised by government MPs.
Oh, well, it's obviously a decision for anyone who attended that protest on the weekend to make for themselves. Graham attended, I didn't. Many thousands of people in Brisbane, in my home state, did. I think that I probably disagree with Gerard a little bit in that I don't really think that the warnings and the requests from leaders on all sides of politics could have been any clearer. You had the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, you had state premiers, state opposition leaders, all asking people not to attend, along with chief health officers. But I think Daniel Andrews is right. In the end, you can't control thousands of people if they are intending to do so. And I think I was certainly surprised by the numbers of people who attended, and I think that was a bit of a wake-up call to all of us about the level of frustration that exists within our First Nations communities about the failure to deliver justice decades after the Royal Commission into Black deaths in custody.
The issue, obviously, one of extreme importance to people. Do you understand why thousands of people decided they couldn't wait because this momentum doesn't come along every day? Do you have criticism of the people who took to the streets or not?
No, I'm not going to criticise the individuals who decided to attend. It's not something that I did. It's an issue that I care about very deeply, and I chose to express myself over social media and by supporting particularly my First Nations colleagues in this parliament who were speaking up about it. So that wasn't something that I thought was the right thing to do, but I'm not going to sit in judgment.
So would you have gone if we weren't in COVID-19, but you didn't want to send out a mixed message by actually attending in person? Is that your view?
Yeah, look, I think it is the kind of rally that I've been to many of those types of rallies over the years, and I probably would have gone had it not been for COVID-19. My personal choice was that I listened to and observed the requests that were made by leaders and by health officials. Other people didn't. I'm not going to judge them for that. And as I say, I think a lot of it does demonstrate the level of frustration in the community about the failure for things to change for the better.
And just on the other argument coming out of all of this, Gerard Rennick, that well, if there are no big spikes out of these protests, we must basically be in the clear, release the handbrakes. Would you agree with that?
Look, I think we're very close to releasing the handbrake. I think had those protests not gone ahead, we probably could have released the handbrakes towards the end of the month at the latest. I guess the right thing to do now is to wait and see whether or not there'll be another outbreak as a result of these protests. But I'm certainly keen to see the state premiers lift the imposition, the restrictions as soon as possible.
All right, I want to move on to what we've seen this morning, and a report from ASPI on the Chinese Communist Party United Front, this well-known magic weapon, as it's described by President Xi. It lays bare the breadth of reach, including even into private companies as well in Australia. Is this something that needs to be really taken pretty earnestly, Murray Watt? There have been recent laws introduced by the government, but we need to really be on guard constantly about this?
Well, of course, Labor has always taken a strong position in terms of foreign interference. We've called for changes to legislation to strengthen foreign interference, particularly in relation to political donations. There's a number of proposals from the government that are currently under consideration by the relevant parliamentary committee, and if those proposals do have merit, then we would support them. I think every foreign policy expert that you listen to at the moment recognises that right now we do face a very different strategic environment and the risk of external actors seeking to influence Australian politics. So we do need to take those things seriously, and we'll certainly be up for any changes that have a good evidence base behind them.
So, and how far should it go? I mean, there's a lot of talk at the moment about Daniel Andrews and a staff member and links to the United Front. Should this group, I mean, anyone with links to this group, be precluded from an involvement in politics at such a high level?
I think we need to be a little bit careful about those sorts of blanket bans, but I do support, and Labor supports, strong measures being taken to prevent foreign influence in our politics. I mean, we saw it at the last federal election, and we've seen it in elections all across the world. It's something that we do have to clamp down on.
Gerard Rennick, your thoughts on this? Nearly out of time.
Look, I pretty much agree with Senator Watt for a change, but yeah, look, I think we need to take these things seriously. I also need to think, though, that while we recognise that China's a threat, we've also got to work with China. But, our intelligence agencies always work with these issues, and we should place confidence in our intelligence agencies to, obviously detect threats where possible. But that also includes, I think, internally as well. I often think that, after my first year in Canberra, I think we've got just as much to fear from the communists within our own Canberra bureaucracy, who seem to want to work against helping Australians get ahead. We're constantly seeing,
hang on.
Red
is Gerard
tape, green tape.
Is Gerard saying that we... Hang on. Is Gerard saying that we have seen communist infiltration of the Australian bureaucracy? That is an extraordinary statement.
Well, the way that they behave towards our people in the private sector, and the difficulty they make with the red tape and the green tape and the blue tape, trying to stop Australian small business from getting ahead, has got to stop. And instead of impeding progress, they need to make sure that they actually help
You're saying
progress.
That the attitude to red tape makes them communist infiltrators?
Well, no, I'm not saying that, but it's the same thing, right? If you're basically going to weaken our internal framework...
No, it's actually not.
...through rules and regulations...
Very different.
No, hang on. OK, Murray, would you like to let me finish, please?
You might need to go back and read a bit about what communism involved and how it's very far from anything we see in
I know what communism involves. It involves in limiting individual freedoms, and we're seeing that. And I commented on that in my maiden speech, that we've got basically we've got all different levels of government that have marched on into the family home, the bedroom, and the classroom, telling individuals how to live their lives. And I think if we would be looking at our own freedoms within our own country and try and reduce the level of government interference and the state influence over our individual lives. So that, to me, is a big threat.
Conflating that issue with when we're talking about the United Front, which is a concerted push from communist China to get power in governments, that's clearly a different thing to whether we should or shouldn't have a certain level of red tape.
I don't necessarily... I don't. The methods, there's similar groups within Australia, right? They're not Chinese groups, they're Australian groups that seek to undermine our individual liberties. And I think that's a greater threat to our sovereignty, or, from within. And I'm going to stand up for it. And I'm not going to apologise for it.
Is there a group within the Australian bureaucracy that they all meet up on a Monday and figure out what they're going to do on Tuesday morning to...
Well, we can see... OK, I'll give you an example, right? You take our Environmental Protection Act. We have laws that prohibit farmers from clearing trees at both the federal and the state level. Why do we need two levels of government? Why is it that a farmer has to... Well, I mean, it has the same impact, right? It's got the same philosophy. It's got, communism. I see communism as where the state overrides the individual.
But philosophy and impact are very different things.
Well, the philosophy is very similar, Tom, and this needs to be said, is that the internal framework is being weakened by too much regulation because it's too much state interference.
All right.
And that's what communism is. It's the state over the individual, whereas I believe in the individual over the state. So I notice you're very defensive, Murray. So, yeah, let's just leave it at that.
No, I'm just absolutely astonished at what I'm hearing. I mean, we are at a point in history where the strategic environment facing our country is extremely fragile. And we see today a continuation of this sort of 1950s McCarthyist Reds under the bed hysteria from members of the government. I think we need to dial it down and take a much more sensible approach.
Excuse me,
we have left. We've gone.
That's not what I said, Murray. We should stand up for our values.